Hello and welcome to the next edition of the Hewlett-Packard Enterprise Voice of the Customer podcast series. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host and moderator for this ongoing discussion on digital transformation. Stay with us now to learn how agile businesses are fending off disruption in favor of innovation. Our next case study highlights how high-performing big data analysis powers an innovative artificial intelligence-based investment opportunity and evaluation tool. We'll learn how LogitBot in New York identifies, manages, and contextually categorizes truly massive and diverse data sources. By leveraging entity recognition APIs, LogitBot not only provides investment evaluations from across these data sets, it delivers the analysis as natural language information directly into spreadsheets as the delivery endpoint. This is a prime example of how complex cloud-to-core to edge processes and benefits can be managed and exploited using the most responsive big data APIs and services. Here to describe how a virtual assistant for targeting investment opportunities is being supported by cloud-based big data services, we're joined by Mutisia Dunda, founder and CEO of LogitBot in New York. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having us.
We're also here with Michael Bishop, CTO of LogitBot. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you for having us. Good to be here.
Good to have you. Let's look at some of the trends driving your need to do what you're doing with AI and bots and bringing together data and then delivering it in the format that people want most. What's the driver in the market for doing this?
So I think at the core of what we're trying to do, LogitBot is all about trying to eliminate frictions between, people that have very high value jobs and some of the more mundane things that could be automated by artificial intelligence. So what we find today in finance is that the industry in general basically looks or searches for investment opportunities using techniques that have been around for over 30 years. And what tends to happen is that the people who are doing this should actually be spending more time on strategic thinking, ideation, and managing risk. But without artificial intelligence tools, they tend to sort of get bogged down in the data and in the day-to-day. So what we've decided to do is sort of help them tackle that problem.
Let the machines do what the machines do best. But how do we decide where the demarcation is between what the machines do well and what the people do well, Michael?
We believe in empowering the user and not replacing the user. So the machine is able to go in depth and do what a high-performing analyst or researcher would do at scale, and do that every day instead of once a quarter, for instance, when research analysts would revisit an equity or a sector. So we can do that constantly and react to events as they happen, and replicate what a high-performing analyst is able to do.
What's interesting to me is you're not only taking a vast amount of data, putting it into a useful format and qualitative type, but you're delivering it in a way that's demanded in the market, that people want and use. So tell me a little bit about this core value and then the edge value and how you came to decide on doing it the way you do.
So I think one of the things that we've sort of, it's an evolutionary process that we've sort of embarked on or are going through. The industry is very used to doing things in a very specific way. And artificial intelligence is not necessarily something that a lot of people are necessarily familiar with in financial services. So what we've decided to do is sort of wrap it around things that are extremely intuitive to an end user who doesn't have the time to learn technology. And so what we've done is we've said we will try to leverage as many things as possible in the back via APIs and all kinds of other things, but the delivery mechanism in the front needs to be as simple or as frictionless as possible to the end person. And so that's kind of our core principle.
I think that there's a key. Finance professionals generally do not like black boxes and mystery. And obviously when you're dealing with money, you don't want to get an answer out of a machine you can't understand. So what we try to provide even though we're crunching a lot of information, we're making a lot of inferences. At the end of the day, they could unwind it themselves if they wanted to go and verify the inferences that we've made. So we're wrapping up an incredibly complicated amount of information, but it still makes sense at the end of the day. It's still intuitive to someone. There's not a sense that this is voodoo under the covers.
Correct.
Well, let's pause there. We'll go back to the data issues and the user experience issues. But tell us a little bit about LogitBot. You're a startup. You're in New York. You're focused on Wall Street. Tell us how you came to be and what you do in a more general sense.
Sure. So I think our professional background has always been in financial services. So personally, I've spent over 15 years in financial services, and my career all led me to what I'm doing today. So in the 2006-2007 timeframe, I left Merrill Lynch to join a large proprietary market-making business called Susquehanna International Group, and they are one of the largest providers of liquidity around the world. So chances are, whenever you buy or sell a stock, you're buying or selling a stock to Susquehanna or one of its competitors. And what had happened in that industry was that people were embracing technology, but it was algorithmic trading. So what has become known today as high-frequency trading. At Susquehanna, we resisted that notion because we said machines don't necessarily make decisions well. And this was before AI had been born. And so we went through this period internally where we had a lot of discussions around, are we losing out to the competition? Should we really go pure bot, more or less? And 2008 hit, and our intuition of allowing our traders to focus on the risky things and then setting up machines to trade riskless or small orders paid off a lot for the firm. It was the best year the firm ever had when everyone else was kind of falling apart. So that was the first piece that kind of got me to understand or to start thinking about how can you empower people and financial professionals to sort of do what they really do well and then not get bogged down in the details. Mm-hmm. And then I joined Bloomberg, and I spent 5 years there as the head of strategy and business development. And the company has an amazing business, but it's built around the notion of static data. And what had happened in that business was that over a period of time, we had begun to see the marketplace valuing analytics more and more and more. So part of the role that I was brought in to do was to sort of help them unwind that and decouple the two things. So, sort of make a distinction within the company about static information versus kind of analytical or valuable information. And the trend that we saw was that hedge funds, especially the ones that were employing systematic investment strategies, were sort of beginning to do the two things. So embrace AI or technology to empower their traders, and then also look deeper into analytics versus static data. And I think that was sort of what brought me to LogitBot was, I thought we could do it really well because, sort of the players themselves don't have the time to do it. And some of the vendors are very stuck in their traditional business models.
And I think we're seeing kind of a renaissance here, or we're at a pivotal moment where we're moving away from analytics in the sense of BERT or business reporting tools or understanding yesterday. We're now able to mine data, get insightful, actionable information out of it, and then move into predictive analytics. Mm-hmm. And it's not just statistical, correlations and I don't want to offend any quants, but we're able, for a lot of reasons, there's a lot of technology that's come online recently. Even it's coming online every day. For us, we for instance, Google had released TensorFlow, and that made a very substantial difference in our ability to reason about natural language, for instance. And that's something that would have, had it not been for that, would have been very difficult, 1 year ago. So, at the moment, technology is really taking off in a lot of areas at once. That enable us to really move from kind of static, even static analysis of what's happened in the past, and kind of move to insightful and actionable information.
Yeah, and I think what Michael kind of touched on there is really important. So I think a lot of traditional ways of looking at financial investment opportunities is to say, historically, this has happened.
Right.
So history should repeat itself.
Yeah.
Yes. And we're in markets where nothing that's happening today has really happened in the past.
Yes.
And so relying on a backward-looking mechanism of trying to interpret the future is kind of really dangerous, versus having a more grounded approach that can actually incorporate things that are non-traditional in many different ways. So unstructured data, what investors are thinking, what central bankers are saying, like all of those are actually really important inputs that weren't part of any model 10 or 20 years ago. And without machine learning and some of the things that we're doing today, it's very difficult to incorporate any of that and make sense of it in a structured way.
So if the goal is to make outlier events your friend and not your enemy, what data do you go to close the gap between what's happened and what the reaction should be? And how do you best get that data and make it manageable for your AI and machine learning capabilities to exploit?
So, and Michael can probably add to this as well. So we do not discriminate as far as data goes. What we like to do is we have no opinion on data ahead of time. We want to get as much information as possible, and then we let a scientific process lead us to decide what data is actually useful for the task that we want to deploy it on. So as an example, we are very opportunistic about acquiring information about who are the most important people at companies, how are they connected to each other, does this guy work on a board with this, like how do they know each other? And it may not have any application at that very moment, but over the course of time, you end up, building models that are actually really interesting. So we scan over 70,000 financial news sources. We capture news information across the world. We don't necessarily use all of that information on a day-to-day basis, but at least we have it, and we can decide how to use it in the future. We also monitor, anything that companies file, obviously, what management teams talk about at investor conferences or on phone conversations with investors.
Conference calls, video interviews.
And HP actually has a really interesting technology that they've recently put out, which is you can transcribe audio to text, and then we can apply our text processing on top of that to sort of understand what management is saying in a sort of structured or machine-based way. As opposed to having 50 people listen to 50 conference calls, you could just have a machine do it for you.
Something we can do there that we couldn't have done before was you can also apply something like sentiment analysis, which you couldn't have done if it was a document, and that can be very valuable.
Yes.
And also,
tonal, I'd say even tonal analysis. There are a few theories on that may or may not pan out, but there are studies around tone and cadence, and you can imagine. So we are looking at it, and we'll see if it actually pans out.
Mm-hmm. And so, do you put this all into your own on-premises data center warehouse, or do you take advantage of cloud and a variety of different means by which to corral and then analyze this data? How do you, take this fire hose and make it manageable?
So the answer is yes, we do take advantage of the cloud quite aggressively. We are split between SoftLayer and Google. And in SoftLayer, we have bare metal hardware machines and some power machines, Power 8 machines with high-powered GPUs. And on the Google side, we take advantage of Bigtable and BigQuery and some of their infrastructure tools on that side. And we have good old Postgres in there as well, and DataStax's Cassandra and their graph as the graph engine. And we make liberal use of Haven APIs as well. and TensorFlow, as I mentioned before. So it's actually it's a smorgasbord of things you need to corral in order to get the job done at the end of the day. And we found it's very hard to find all of that wrapped in a bow with one provider. And so we're big proponents of Kubernetes and Docker as well. And we leverage that to avoid lock-in where we can, so that we have our workload can migrate between Google and the SoftLayer Kubernetes cluster. So we can migrate between hardware or virtual machines depending on the need at the moment, or the horsepower that's needed at the moment. So that's how we handle it.
So maybe 10 years ago you would have been in a systems integration capacity. Now you're in a services integration capacity, but you're doing some very powerful things at a clip and probably at a cost that would have been impossible before.
Yes, I certainly remember placing an order for a server and waiting 6 months, and then setting up the RAID drives and So I come from it's amazing actually that you can just flick a switch and you get even at SoftLayer take 24 hours. You have a very high powered machine that would have taken 6 months to order previously. Or in Google, you spin up a VM in seconds. That's again of a horsepower that would have taken 6 months to get.
So unprecedented innovation is now at our fingertips when it comes to the IT side of things. Unprecedented in machine intelligence now that the algorithms and APIs are driving the opportunity to take advantage of that data. Let's go back to thinking about what you're outputting and who uses that. Is the investment results that you're generating something that go to a retail type of investor? Is this something you're selling to investment houses, a still undetermined addressable market? How do you bring this to market?
So the way we think about it is the Rob Auto, which is the natural language interface into our analytical tools, can basically be custom tailored to respond based on the user's level of financial sophistication. So at the present moment, we're actually trying him out on a semi-professional investment platform where people are actually professional traders, but not part of a major brokerage house, as an example. And they obviously want to get trade ideas, they want to do analytics, and they're a little bit more sophisticated than, say, people who are looking at investment for their retirement account. And Rob can be tailored for that specific use case. He can also respond to somebody who's managing a portfolio at a hedge fund. And it's just the level of depth that he needs to sort of consider is the only differential between those two things. So in the back, he may do an extra 5 steps if the person asking the question worked at a hedge fund, versus if the person was just asking about why is Apple up today, and you are a retail investor, you don't really want to do a lot of in-depth analysis.
You couldn't do anything with you couldn't take the output and do anything with it or understand it.
So the idea that we have is that again, Rob is an interface, but the analytics are available via multiple venues. So you can access the same analytic via an API, via a chat interface, via the web, via a feed, that streams into you. And it just depends on how your systems are personally set up within your organization. But the data will be available to you.
Right. Going out to that edge equation, that user experience, we've talked about how you deliver this to the endpoints that customary, spreadsheets, cells, pivots, whatever. But it also sounds like you're going perhaps more natural language, so that you could query rather than a deep SQL environment, like what we get with a Siri or the Amazon equivalent. Is that where we're heading?
When we started this, trying to parameterize everything that you could ask into enough checkboxes and forms and screen real estate pollutes a screen, and he has access, or the system rather has access to an enormous amount of data that you can't create a parameterized screen for. And we found it was a bit of a breakthrough when we were able to start using natural language. Really, again, TensorFlow made a huge difference here in natural language understanding, and then understanding the intent of the questioner, and then being able to parameterize a query from that has made a tremendous amount of difference. And if our initial findings here pan out or continue to pan out, it's going to be a very powerful interface. I think I can't imagine having to go back to a SQL query if you're able to just if you're able to do it in natural language, and it really pans out this time. Because we've had a few turns of the handle of alleged natural language querying.
Always a moving target. Tell us a little bit specifically about SentryWatch and Precog. How did these shake out in terms of your go-to-market strategy?
Sure. So one of the things that we have to do to sort of be able to answer a lot of questions that our customers may have is monitor my financial markets and what's impacting them on a continuous basis. And so the product SentryWatch is literally a byproduct of that process, where because we're monitoring over 70,000 financial news sources, we're analyzing the sentiment, we're doing deep text analysis on it, we're identifying entities and how they're related to each other in all of these news events. And we're sticking that into a knowledge graph of how everything relates to everything else. It ends up being actually a really valuable tool, not only for us, but for other people, because while we're building models, there's also a lot of hedge funds that have proprietary models or proprietary processes that could benefit from that very same organized relational data store of news. And so that's what SentryWatch is, and that's kind of how it's evolved. It started off as something that we were doing as an input, and it's actually now a valuable output or a standalone product on its own. Precog is, I think, a way for us to showcase the ability of a machine to be predictive and not be backward looking. So again, when people are making investment decisions or allocation of capital across different investment opportunities, you really care about your forward return on your investment. So if I invest a dollar today, am I likely to make 20 cents in profit tomorrow or 30 cents in profit tomorrow? And we are using pretty sophisticated machine learning models that can take into account unstructured data sources as part of the modeling process. And that will give you, these forward expectations about stock returns in a very easy to use format where you don't need to have a PhD in physics or mathematics. You just ask, what is the likely return of Apple over the next 6 months, given into account what's going on in the economy, what's going on in the sector, how Apple, today I think they were fined $14 billion. Yeah. So that can be quickly added into a model and reflect a new view in a matter of seconds versus sitting down in a spreadsheet and trying to figure out how it all works out.
Even for Apple, that's a chunk of change.
It is a lot of money.
And you can imagine there are quite a few analysts on Wall Street in Excel right now,
yes,
updating their models around this so that they can have an answer by the end of the day. Where we already have an answer.
Yeah. So
how do the Haven on Demand APIs help the Precog when it comes to deciding those sources, getting them in the right format that then you can exploit?
I would say the beauty about the platform is that it simplifies a lot of development processes that an organization our size would have to sort of take on themselves. So the nice thing about it is that a drag and drop interface is really intuitive. You don't need to be specialized in Java or Python or whatever it is. You can kind of set up your intent in a graphical way and then test it out and build and expand it as you sort of go along. So the Lego block structure is actually really useful because if you want to try things out, it's drag and drop. Connect the dots and then see what you get on the other end. So for us, that is an innovation that we haven't seen with anybody else in the marketplace, and it cuts development time for us significantly.
Michael, anything more to add on how this makes your life a little easier?
Well, I think for us, lowering the cost in time to run an experiment is very important when you're running a lot of experiments. And the combinations product enables us to run a lot of varied experiments using a variety of the Haven APIs in different combinations very quickly. And so you're able to get your development time down from, a week, 2 weeks, whatever it is, to wire up an API to our system. In the same amount of time, you're able to wire the initial connection, and then you have access to pretty much everything in Haven, and you turn it over to either a business user or someone, or a data scientist, or a machine learning person, and they can drag and drop the connectors themselves. So it makes my life easier. It makes the developers' lives easier, because it gets time back for us.
And so not only have we been able to democratize the querying, moving from SQL to natural language, for example, we're also democratizing the choice on sources and combinations of sources in real time, more or less, for different types of analysis, not just the query, but the actual source of the data.
Yeah, and I think, again, like, the power of a lot of this stuff is in the unstructured world, because valuable information typically tends to be hidden in documents. And in the past, you'd have to have a team of people kind of scour through text and extract what they thought was valuable and summarize it to you. And you could miss out on, like 90% of the other valuable stuff that's in the document. So with this ability now to drag and drop and then, go through a document in 5 different iterations by just, tweaking a parameter is actually really useful.
Yeah. So those would be the idle-backed APIs that you're referring to.
Yeah, exactly.
It's something that would be hard for an investment bank even a few years ago to process this. So, everyone is kind of on the same playing field here, or starting from the same base, but dealing with unstructured data has been traditionally a very difficult problem. And so you have a lot of technologies coming online that happen to also be coming online, and coming online as APIs. At the same time, they're coming on as traditional on-premises solutions. So we're all kind of starting from the same gate here, relatively. Some folks are a little ahead, but I would say, Facebook is further ahead than an investment bank in their ability to reason over unstructured data. So in our world, I feel like we're starting basically at the same place that a Goldman or a Morgan would be.
Very interesting reset we're going through. Also interesting that we talked earlier about the divide between where the machine and the individual knowledge worker begins or ends. That's going to be a moving target. Any sense of how that changes, this characterization of what the right combination is of machine intelligence and the best of human intelligence?
I think my opinion is that I don't foresee machines replacing humans per se. I see them empowering humans, and to the extent that your role is not completely based on a task, if it's based on something where you actually manage a process that goes from one end to another, I think those particular positions will be there, and they'll actually free up people to sort of focus on that. But if in the case where you have somebody that is really responsible for something that can be automated, then obviously that'll go away. Machines don't eat, they don't need to take vacation, and if it's a task where you don't need to reason about it, obviously then you can have a computer do it. But what we're seeing now is that if you have a machine sitting side by side to a human, and the machine can kind of pick up on how the human reasons with some of the new technologies, then he can do a lot of the grunt work, or the machine can do a lot of the grunt work.
Yes.
And I think that's sort of the future of all of this stuff.
I think what we're delivering is we distill a lot of information down so that a knowledge worker or a decision maker can make a decision, an informed decision, instead of watching CNBC and making decision based on, or being a single source reader, we can go out and scour the best of all the information and distill it down and present it, and they can choose to act on it. But we don't envision making the next jump, or at least our goal here is not to make the next jump and make the decision. Our job is to present the information to a decision maker.
It certainly seems to me, though, that the organization, big or small, retail or commercial, that can make the best use of this technology, machine learning, in the end will win.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it is a transformational technology because for the first time in a really long time, the reasoning piece of it is within grasp of machines. They can make, even if today they're probabilistic, but they can make decisions between pro versus con versus just A or B. Like, before it was if this, then that. And now it's no longer that. Machines can operate in the gray area, which is where the world lives.
And that gray area can almost have unlimited variables applied to it.
Correct, yes.
I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. We've been exploring how high-performing big data analysis powers an innovative artificial intelligence-based investment opportunity and evaluation tool. And we learned how LogitBot in New York identifies, manages, and contextually categorizes truly massive and diverse data sources. So please join me in thanking our guests. We've been here with Mutisia Dunda, founder and CEO of LogitBot in New York. Thank you, sir.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
And we've also been here with Michael Bishop, CTO of LogitBot. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Dana.
And a big thank you as well to our audience for joining us for this Hewlett-Packard Enterprise Voice of the Customer Digital Transformation discussion. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host for this ongoing series of HPE-sponsored interviews. Thanks again for listening, and do come back next time.